Welcome to A Dram of Outlander. This is Desiree, your podcaster and a writer for adramofOutlander.com. Thank you for joining me for discussions of the Outlander book series by Diana Gabaldon, the Starz television series, and anything interesting that falls between. This is podcast episode 151, and we're in the second week of the countdown to season 4. Heck yeah! I have spent time this week rewatching episodes 1 through 4 of season 3 with totally fresh eyes. I have a little secret. I didn't rewatch them after the end of the season. I was steeped into Drums of Autumn with you guys doing the read-along. So, interesting exercise. And I really was able to see it with completely fresh eyes because I didn't remember some of the details from last season. Yes, I write a podcast script every week. I watch them several times. But we were in the book, so all the television show things, all the details got pushed aside for the book characters that we know. So now I'm able to jump back in with the Alterverse of the TV show characters. So it's fascinating, and I found myself being very responsive to some of the changes that bristled me a little bit my first view through. So one thing I will just say off the top that hasn't changed at all is that Sam Heughan's wigs, Jamie's hair was atrocious. Like, beyond. I have no idea why they made those styling choices. If they're going to put a wig on it, they could have just had him in shoulder-length hair, just like Lord John, right? That he just plaited back. That makes sense. Yes, Sam Heughan has a bit of a forehead, so what? It's a beautiful forehead. Jamie would have had a strong forehead if he, he's real in my head, and Diana's, but you know what I mean. He would have had strong features as a Viking. But that hairstyling choice, I really hope they have fixed it this season. It seems like his has just been hit or miss and very hobbity and just very bizarre through the whole series. And I will say I am so thankful that we will not be in the 1960s with that Claire hair. I did not like the severe hair. I didn't like it in historically looking at women in my own family, and it's just so bulletproof. So that, my friends, has not changed after watching the first 4 episodes again. I would love to hear what your thoughts on the hair and makeup from season 3, at least the first part of it was. What do you think about it? I mean, it was very reflective of the time. I just think that Sam's hair was just so out of control. Like, it made much more sense when he was the caveman and it was all just long. They could have just trimmed it up and shaved his beard instead of giving him those god-awful bangs again. I don't know. I can't do bangs anymore. My hair's too curly. It looks ridiculous. I look just like a bad 80s ad if we do that. No. So I feel it. I feel the pain. But the funny thing is, if they weren't even using his real hair, why did they give him like a curly-haired wig? I don't know, man. I guess to match his own hair from the first season when they were actually using Sam and Caitriona's own locks. But whatever. I don't want to beat this horse too deeply. One of the things that happened this week was there was the New York City Comicon, and Outlander was there. And thankfully, Diana Gabaldon was also there because originally she was left out, and she tweeted about it. She wasn't very happy at not being invited. And at first, it was like, oh, we're just doing a short panel. It's no big deal. Well, it turned out into 2 panels that Diana was on with Ron and the Stars and Maril. And she did her own author panel that Outlander ended up tweeting, Outlander stars, that is. And there was a couple other interviews. So it turned out to be a much bigger thing. They ended up having Fraser's Ridge there for people to look at. So it turned out to be quite a lot bigger event than originally intended. In one of the panels, they actually showed the first episode of season 4 to the lucky viewers. Of course, we didn't get to see that. No, if you were streaming. And it looks like it was a big hit. How's that? Everybody seems very positive about this season and about where it's going, and that Jamie and Claire are kind of settled in. Well, except for the fact that it's Outlander, there's always going to be tons of adventure and crazy things going on. But that you're going to see them in a mature space. You're going to see them in a more comfortable space with each other. I just see that ferment and grow. We're going to see them for the first time with their own home. I mean, we've seen Fraser's Ridge all over the place. It is not new. And that is really going to be spectacular to see this season. Yes, they will continue to have adventures because they are people who continuously find trouble or things to be in defense of, or name your whatever, however you want to name it. And we're going to get to see a bunch of new characters like we talked about last week. We're really going to get to see young Ian and his character fleshed out. He was amazing, and we've really gotten to meet him, but now we're going to see him as a young man, and a young man who is coming out of a very traumatic experience under the hands of Mrs. Abernathy, Galis Duncan. And we're going to see the addition of Rollo, who is a favored animal character, and I'm so grateful. I don't care if this is a spoiler for those of you who don't read. I think the majority of my listeners do read the books. Is the fact that Rollo is going to go with us through several more seasons if the show gets renewed for the whole book series. It is currently renewed through season 6. Season 5 is being written right now, so that's really exciting. So at least we'll get into Fiery Cross and beyond. But we don't know if we will get 7, 8, and 9 is almost out. It should be out hopefully late winter, early spring 2019. So I do believe, I keep hearing over and over that the main cast, Caitriona and Sam, have signed on for 6 or 7 seasons for sure. And I think that Starz has been very good with giving them opportunity and giving them time off since how long the first shooting season was. Now they've been able to work on multiple projects and continue to work in between seasons, because Outlander is a very difficult and exhausting show. And even as we add all these new characters in, Sam and Caitriona are still going to be at the center of it as Claire and Jamie. So hopefully that's enough buffer with giving them time to work on other things and to stretch their creativity as actors, that they would come back once their contracts are up. I really hope so. Because I can't see if the show gets renewed for seasons 7 and 8 if Sam and Caitriona don't want to be Claire and Jamie anymore. I mean, I can't imagine that happening, that we would have a show. Like, it couldn't work, right? So let's just, keep loving on them as much as we can and loving on their other projects so they will come back if the series continues to get renewed as it has. I mean, gosh, 6 years is a huge run for shows these days that aren't something like Law and Order or NCIS. Detective kind of shows. For this kind of show, this is a really long run, and an intensive run. So, that being said, we really got to see a lot of Rick Rankin and Sophie Skelton, who are Roger Wakefield Mackenzie and Brianna Randall Fraser. We get to see a lot of them at this New York City Comicon and in the streams. Rick is so funny, and he is incredible. And Sophie, it seems like she's getting really comfortable. I was actually watching a show called DCI Banks that I found out is based on another book series. I'm going to check it out. And Sophie Skelton was in an episode, and it was a few years ago. She looked quite a bit different, and I think it's because she was still a teenager, and her teeth hadn't been straightened yet. But it took me a second, because her hair was her natural color, and I had to sit there and look at her, because it wasn't that red color. It took me a moment, but she did really well in that show. It was only one episode she was in, but she was interesting. But we really got to see them, and they, along with young Ian, are really going to be doing a lot of building. We also heard about, of course, Stephen Bonnet, like we talked about, and Aunt Jo Costa, who is a tough woman. And they're going to be really looking at slavery and the colonies, the nations, the American Indians, Native American. I saw something today. It happens to be Columbus Day, which hardly anybody celebrates anymore, for good reason, that they are calling it Indigenous Peoples Day. But from everything that I've researched, that is really a term or a phrase that is not liked, and that the different tribal peoples in North America of the United States portion, Canada calls themselves First Nations, Alaska, they call themselves Alaska Natives. But across the U.S., there were so many different tribes, and they thought of themselves as totally separate people. So to classify them all together, and Native American they don't like because they don't consider themselves Americans. They were here first. So everything I keep reading, and I know I've said it multiple times before, is American Indian is more appropriate unless they go by their tribal name, nation, or they want to be called something that reflects what they think of their own position and their status, what they should be called. So it is going to be fascinating, and I do hope, and Ron Moore in one panel said that, I think it was Ron, saying that we have to be really careful not to be putting our 21st century social kind of mores, he didn't use those words, I'm paraphrasing, onto what was happening at the time, and that we really just need to see it for what it was. Oh, it was Ron who said it. That's right. That they try to show it to us accurately, to give us a picture of what really was going on. So they're not trying to excuse it, and they're not trying to put it into our mind frame. Because people really thought, if they grew up with slaves, they really thought it was okay. They don't really see the injustice and the indignity, and when it had been generation upon generation upon generation, they don't remember, like, intrinsically, they don't generationally remember what it was like without slaves. They don't have family history without it. And I'm sorry, that was my cat jumping on top of my recording box. So I apologize. It made me jump a little. So we're going to be seeing some of these really raw things. We're also going to be seeing what it would be like to move out into the backcountry and have nothing and start fresh. This reminds me of homesteaders who came from the east and were offered land grants when they got to places like Nebraska and Kansas, etc., when they got to the Midwest, and how hard that must have been. And yes, they encroached onto other people's lands. I absolutely understand that, without a doubt. And the fact that they tried to adapt their sort of Western European ways, their colonial ways, to these new landscapes is amazing to me. Like, they tried to just pick up what they had and just build it there, and it didn't really work very well. And there's so much history in the founding of the United States of America that is very difficult. And to sit on this side of it, and we had no control over that. But we can also talk openly about it and see it for what it is and not repeat those same things, right? Okay, I'm not going to get like all political on you because you know how I feel about that. So we sat down and rewatched and took notes, and the battle joined. It amazed me. I don't think there was any dialogue until almost 8 minutes in. There was breathing. There was movement. We saw Jamie flashing back in memory as he lay on the ground, barely conscious, and he would drift in and out, and he had a dead body laying on him, and it was presumed to be Blackjack Randall until we finally see in the episode that it was. But we just saw his memories, and he was flashing to leaving Claire at the Stones and what happened in the battle. It was sort of disordered. And there were British soldiers going around and killing anybody who was sort of alive, mostly dead, on the battlefield. And they were just summarily killing them right there. And somehow he got missed. And it went all the way into the night. It was sort of that twilight, getting dark hour, and he sees a bunny, which signifies change and spring and new life. And Jamie intended to die. 100% absolutely intended to die. But the work that Sam did here was just stellar. He didn't utter a word until deep into the episode. And then it was very fragmented because he was ill and he had a serious wound. He wasn't walking around. He was laying down the whole episode. But yet, he told us what was going on. You could see it in his countenance, in his eyes. And it spoke volumes. He hallucinated about seeing Claire. And all this was just going back and forth into him laying on the ground and seeing the battle. And then we get to really see that moment when he sees Blackjack Randall. And he gets pulled off of his horse. And Blackjack sees Jamie. And they, go for it. And it's like time stopped around them. Have you ever been in a bubble like that, in a situation where it feels like that? You hear nothing. You see nothing. All your senses are only geared towards what's going on right in front of you. That happens to me at every delivery. I'm just in it. I know I've told you that before. It's like that when you see a car accident and you're the witness and how it unfolds. It's really fascinating because how our brain functions in these situations. But they were so hyper-focused on each other, and it was such a beautiful scene. And when they first, come together and they clash, it almost looks like Blackjack is going to kiss him. It's almost seductive. Tobias Menzies, God, rest in peace, Frank. And rest in peace. Well, no, rest in hell, Blackjack. Really, let's be honest. But he works in such subtle ways. Like, Tobias Menzies is not like the T-Rex on the screen where he's stomping through the scenes and chewing scenery up and spitting it out. And he's not like that. He can just be so restrained. And with a character like Blackjack Randall, who we had seen explode at times, he has such, restrained is the right word, malevolence about him. And, we really never get beneath his skin. We never really get to peel back the layers like we have a lot with Jamie or with Claire, or even with Rupert. Blackjack is still an enigma. Nature, nurture, both. Some people are born sociopaths. I don't know. But he's definitely a predator. And it looks like when they kind of come together like he is, he's just about to kiss him. Like he's savoring being this close to Jamie. And that if he can't have him, he may as well kill him on the battlefield. Like, all bets are off here. They can do what they want. And there's this like epic fight between them, and he slashes across Jamie's thigh, which will kill you. Femoral artery, you could just bleed out, right, if you hit it. But it's a huge blade, and he's been cutting up other people along this way. It's not like it's a clean, sterile blade. A lot of dirt on the field, a lot of germs. So this is serious, and Jamie is caked in other people's blood and sweat and all the things. And then Jamie's able to like attack back, and he severely wounds Blackjack. And you see this choreographed dance. It is just lovely. And for me just to sit here and watch it after 13 months of seeing it the first time. I mean, I watched it probably 2 or 3, maybe 4 times surrounding the podcast when I did it and during the season, but I haven't gone back and watched it again. So it's pretty tremendous to be able to sit here and watch it again. And I didn't even think about what it was about before I sat down. I just was like, I'm just going to watch this and be really open to it. And God, it was beautiful. And it was terrible. And to see them like do this dance and then kind of crash into each other and fall. And that's where they laid. And that's where Blackjack died on top of Jamie, possibly saving his life because he was compressing the wound on his leg, acting as a tourniquet, so Jamie wouldn't bleed to death. Pretty fascinating. And at one point, Jamie hallucinates that Claire is walking through all the bodies on the field, and they're just piled everywhere. And he thinks it's Claire, and she comes to him and asks if, he's alive. But it's actually Rupert, who refuses to let Jamie stay on the field, and Jamie doesn't want to get up. He doesn't want to go anywhere. He just wants to die, and Rupert won't let him. So he takes him to the cottage near the field. I've seen the cottage. I haven't been in it. And that's where several men are holed up, most of them who are gravely injured, many who just made it there off the field. And the English are going to come. It's not far from the field. It's right there, this little farmhouse. But Jamie's just laying on the floor, wanting to die, hoping to die. He hasn't been able to get there yet. He tries so hard. The man is impossible to kill. Oh, over in the Facebook group, Jan started a really great thread, and she wrote a post about Jamie. How many times has Jamie died? So if you go to the website at dreamofoutlander.com, there's a whole post written about how many times he's died and what counts and what doesn't. So go over there and take a peek at it. But he's very hard to kill. And eventually the English show up. The British show up. Many Scots fought for the British side because they weren't Catholic Jacobites. It was a very specific group of people in the uprising. It wasn't all Scots. This wasn't about getting their country back. They freely gave that away in 1707, I believe, because they were under severe economic hardship when they joined the Union. The United Kingdom is what I mean. So this was not about their country's freedom. This was about an issue of who should be king. And if you look at historical precedents, yeah, he should have been king, but he wasn't. That's how it panned out. I would never want to be royal. That shit is cutthroat. Let me tell you. Absolutely cutthroat. I would never want to go to court. I want people not to know who I was. I'm going to go live somewhere in the country where nobody can find me. I'm not going to be a risk taker. Because how many people died when you read through it, like, especially just of what we call the United Kingdom, as all that was being formed in the past 1,000 to 1,200 years. It was just beyond. No, you don't want to have anything to do with being like upper crusty. Because you're marked. Because somebody else wants your position. So that's just beautiful. And ultimately, Lord John Grey's brother, remember? Near Craigh, the 16-year-old who thought that Claire was in danger because she was amongst all these Highlanders, all these Jacobites. And that young boy came to try and slash Jamie's throat, and they put a ruse over him that Claire was actually in trouble, got him to tell them things, took all the wheels off of all their wagons, and tied him up after breaking his arm. Well, that was very shameful for Lord John. But there was a debt of honor that he gave to Jamie, that he owed him a life because he spared his life and did not kill him that day. So fast forward to being in this farmhouse, and here comes in young Lord Melton, who happens to be Harold Craigh, Lord John's older brother. And he was sent to dispatch those who were alive and execute them honorably, like the soldiers they are. And Hal is very honorable. And so he's in there and he's giving people time to write down notes to their family. So Melton is a decent guy. He really is a good guy. And if you've read any of the Lord John books, you get to really know Hal. And Fugitive Green is about Hal and Minnie. I like him. And he also shows up in later Outlander books. But I digress. So they're being taken out and shot, right? And the last able-bodied person, I'm going to get weepy, who was taken out was Rupert. It's so painful. And then when they came back to start working on the non-ambulatory people, those who could not stand on their own, they would kind of prop them up to be shot. So it was proper. When Jamie said what his name was, Hal was like, crap. Because he knew he was Red Jamie. He knew his brother had a family debt of honor with this man. And so Melton took Jamie, had one of the other soldiers bribe a guy driving a cart, put him in the back of a cart at nighttime, and sent him back to Lallybroch. Now, this didn't cancel the debt on Jamie. He was a traitor, and now he was escaped. Yeah. So he sent him back to clear the family debt to Lallybroch. And we saw Jamie being feverish and really unwell when he got to Jamie and Ian Murray at Lallybroch. So that's what happened with him in this episode. And it was very emotional and, God, visceral. And there was very little dialogue on the 18th century side. I mean, minimal dialogue, really. Rupert gave some comic relief, but for the most part, it was pretty heady, very heavy, and there wasn't much. It was all about the visual and all about the acting. So Frank and Claire are shown. So I'm going to talk about back to the 20th century. They have gone to Boston, remember? Claire made a deal with Frank that they would raise this baby. The past is the past, and she was never going to bring it up again. Now, this had two very different meanings. To Frank and to Claire. To Claire, that meant she was going to put her head down. She was going to do her best to fit into these new roles. This meant she was going to throw herself into domesticity, and that she was not going to talk about Jamie. But what that did for Claire was that put walls up even more walls, right? That it's like she put on her Vulcan suit. I'm not going to be emotional. I'm just going to do what I have to do, and now I'm closed. I'm a closed door. And so she really locked up her heart real tight. I mean, Frank did love her, and he had great hopes that she would not just physically come back to him, that to him, leaving the past in the past meant that she would come forward in life with him, and that she would again be his wife, and they could get to know each other again. And, you know, he's teaching at the university, and they're going to have a baby to raise together. But Claire wasn't emotionally available. And he was pretty okay with it until the pregnancy started getting really advanced. And then he felt really like she wasn't trying, right? But they were going to try and make a real home. And it wasn't easy for Claire, and she struggled. I mean, she even struggled with the modern appliances and was cooking in the fireplace at one point with her nosy, very extroverted neighbor. And we really got to see the stark contrast. Even though women had realistically very limited avenues in the 18th century, Claire really just kicked a hole in that. And yes, she really did need male escort. Times were different. But she really could do what she wanted to do because she was a healer and she was respected. It gave her power, right? And she traveled everywhere with Jamie. And all of a sudden now she's like locked up in the house, and she's going to be just... I don't mean to use the word just. I was a non-working stay-at-home mom for quite a while because I love to work, and I knew that I could not do career and babies at the same time. Now, I did some part-time side work and did some other things, and I ran groups, and I was always very busy. But I knew that that was not something that was sustainable for me for the rest of my life. I knew once the kids got to a certain age, I was going to go back to work, and I would have a career, and the time was right. And I slowly worked back into it over a period of a few years and became a midwife and did those things. But it was after my youngest was weaned and we could work into something. But it was very purposeful, but I never could have left a career path for my whole life. And like right now, I can't imagine if I, for the last 22 years, had been a stay-at-home wife and mother. I know for some people that is very fulfilling. I understand, Claire, that wasn't fulfilling. I couldn't have done it. And I'm thankful even now to have a spouse that even when I struggled with things and trying to find my path and how I was going to do it and not sacrifice the family over it, he seemed to find balance with it better than me. And he always saw what I would do down the road way ahead of me. So that was really a blessing for him to say, babe, it's okay. We got it. And Claire struggled. She really struggled with not being, quote, useful once Brianna wasn't tiny. Little tiny people take a lot of energy. Like, I'm always in awe of women who go back to work at a month or 6 weeks. And I have several clients who are the breadwinners in their family. And I'm in awe of that, like that they do it and they do it so well. Part of that is support systems and giving them as many tools as possible from my vantage point to help them transition and be able to pump milk and do what they need to do. But it's hard, and I know it's hard on them. And we talk about the challenges way past the time I care for them. And I think women carry that unique burden because we do carry the babies. And even if you don't carry a baby pregnancy-wise and you grow a baby in your heart and you adopt, women are still generally the caretakers for the first years. And it's a challenge. And it was to Claire as well. And she didn't want to just be a hood ornament. you know? She didn't want to just be a sparkle on Frank's arm. And they went to a university meeting with all the rude men in his department. And, you know, she was made fun of for reading the Boston Globe and for having a political opinion. And, you know, oh, it was really nice that you helped out. You did your patriotic duty during the war. Now you get to do something really satisfying. The value of me being able to stay at home with my children for the years that I did, I would never replace that. I'm thankful we had the ability for me to do it. Absolutely can never replace those years, and I never would. But to say that that's the only most important thing, no, it's not. So Claire is patronized. They're absolute misogynistic jerks. And that really was that post-World War II, 1950s, early 1960s kind of attitudes. It was terrible. It was taking all the women who did all the work during World War I and World War II, who were in the job force, were kicking booty to keep this country going. And now when the big strong men came back from war, had to give them something to do, so all the women got kicked out of their jobs. And they had no guarantees. And it was really tough. It was, I think, a really bleak time in our history for women. After all the progress that they had made and all the ability that they had when they were on their own during the war times. And we get to see that conflict in Claire. And I think Frank kind of liked Claire being in that, quote, traditional role, even though he knew it probably didn't suit her fantastically. At one point, Claire, right, is in the kitchen, and she sees a bird and that nature. Now, we've seen her locked in the house. Basically, she's not locked in the house. She's not a prisoner, but she's a prisoner of her own emotions. She's a prisoner of being back in the 20th century. She's a prisoner of circumstances that she can't help, and she's pregnant. What the heck is she supposed to do? And she's frustrated, and we don't really see her in her element. Outside of cooking in the fireplace, we don't see her in nature. Claire and nature, that is a beautiful tapestry, right? It's a beautiful song. And we see that bird, and you know that's reminiscent of Jamie, right? That's nature, that's her, that's that bird song. And it hits her hard. Claire also tells Frank at one point that she wants to become a citizen of the United States, right? That she doesn't have any ties to England. She wants a fresh start. And her daughter, sorry, that's my cat again. She really wants in the booth, and I cannot let her be in here. She's being very noisy right now. My apologies. That their daughter is going to be an American. This is her home. And Frank kind of just like kicks her off of that idea that they're going to be fine. They're both going to have visas as long as he has a job. And that's not really what it's about for her. And then it's uncomfortable for them. And Claire doesn't want him touching her. And this is where he accuses her of using her pregnancy to not be intimate. No, it's not the pregnancy, honey. It's everything else going on. So we do see the start of Frank writing a letter to Reverend Wakefield to do research on this Jamie Fraser in history. And he has to put it away because Claire goes into labor, her water breaks, yada, yada. They're at the hospital. Claire's rocking her labor, and then the misogynistic doctor puts her under general anesthesia after getting her brief medical history, now saying she's high risk because she had a miscarriage when she did, which is BS. In context to what's going on. And that should have already been in her medical history. They would have had it. And abruptions happen. It didn't necessarily make her high risk in this pregnancy. Anyhow. So Frank just found out that she had had a prior pregnancy. And this kind of jolts him for a second, right? So there's that layer on top of it. Frank says he loves her as she's being taken into the delivery room. She says nothing, and then afterward, Claire wakes up, and this was so heartbreaking. Remember when she woke up after Faith, and she wants her baby? Well, she wakes up in this panic because she has no baby in her hands. And she thinks the baby's dead, and Frank brings in the baby, and they have this beautiful moment, and maybe it can be a fresh start. So in the beginning, we have real home. We're going to build a real home, and maybe we can have a fresh start. And as soon as they say that, and Frank says he loves her again, and she doesn't say anything back, the nurse is like, oh, where'd she get the red hair from? Kind of broke that right there. This is going to be a really long podcast unless I condense the next 3 episodes into like 25 minutes. So that's the foundation that we kind of see going on. There's this happy family is already struggling. Claire and Frank struggle. Jamie's back at Lollybrock, and we don't know what he's going to do because the bounty's not off his head. He's one of the upper officers who was a traitor. You know, the Bonnie Prince had signed that letter as Jamie being the Laird of Lollybrock. And one thing we have to remember is Jamie had the foresight to backdate a deed of cession for young Jamie Murray to be the holder of the land. So no matter what happened to him, the land would stay in the Murray family, the Murray Mackenzie family. Episode 2 is called Surrender. And the title really speaks for itself. Jamie's a fugitive. They think the Dunbonnet is Jamie. Every new British officer that gets this posting tries to come and find this fugitive because they would put a big feather in his cap, right? So we have Rabbie, Fergus, and young Jamie. They find a gun in the Ducat, which is the Dove House, right? And they put it back, and the redcoats come and harass Ian and take him away, and Jenny tries to talk him down and says they can search the premises, yada, yada. So this just shows during those years, post-Culloden, it was like that. There was mass harassment. It was just savagery, where homes were burnt down, people were arrested, they were accused. Even though there was no evidence, it was just this cleansing that took place. As many were trying, like we talked about before, tried to go to the colonies for a fresh start, or they would indenture themselves to get a fresh start. And there was nothing. They couldn't earn a living. The land, was being burnt. They couldn't grow things. They didn't have resources. They should have starved to death, except for Claire told them, right, to plant potatoes. So it's not great at Lollybrock. And then we see after Ian's taken away, Jamie catches a deer and he takes the deer to the house. I kind of thought it was funny that all of these scenes with Jamie, who's supposed to be in hiding, were done during the daylight. Like, wouldn't he only have come out at night? Like, he wouldn't have come out during the day where soldiers could have seen him. And his hair is like down to his waist, and he's got this giant red beard. I mean, anyway, he looks like a caveman at this point. And he's not talking. Again, we see very little speech from him. We don't see any when Jamie's talking to him as he's butchering this deer. And she asks him to look at the books. And Jenny's very pregnant at this point. And there's this whole duress that Lollybrock is under. And Jamie tries to stay in the cave, and Fergus is fascinated by this gun. They're not supposed to have guns at all. They're not supposed to have their tartans at all. And this gun is a very terrible thing to have on hand. The other character we see a lot is Mary McNabb, Rabbie's mother. She came to work in the household, and she is a big help to Jenny. So, long story short here, Jamie tells Fergus to put the gun back after Fergus, yells at him in the cave and goes to visit him. And Fergus has it in for these British soldiers, and it's just a mess. Like, Fergus is like the worst of teenage years right now. Like, he's a mess, right? He's hormonal and should not have access to other people right now. And probably because of the stress, Jenny goes into labor. Jamie ends up coming back to the house for some other reason. And the boys shoot a raven because it's bad luck. And then the soldiers, of course, hear it because it's during the day. Like a gunshot in a place where there is not supposed to be any weapons. Yeah, in an area. So, of course, it's a big to-do, right? And Jamie's holding the baby and he's hiding in a room. And Mary McNabb comes in and she's like, oh, the gun was mine. It was my husband's. I'm sorry. I shot a raven. It's bad luck. Totally, Mary McNabb saves the damn day. They had to say the baby was dead. All that stuff. And that's young Ian that's born. We come to love, right? So this is 6 years after Culloden happened, okay? And so we're looking at 1752 roughly. And all these things happen. And then Fergus taunts the damn soldiers because they're going and searching and gets his hand cut off. And then Jamie feels guilty because he didn't stop it, though he saw it, and all the things. And now Jamie, you see, they're coming back to life because it gave him a purpose. So Jamie hatched a plan to have Jenny turn him in, like say that he contacted her and that he's coming home. And then she can get the big fat reward money. So they have money to survive on for a while, right? And Jenny's mad at hell at her brother. But she agrees. And Mary McNabb, I know some people love this. I'm one of the people who love it. Mary McNabb went to the cave, brought him food, shaved him, cut his hair, and then gave him those god-awful bangs again, which I don't understand. Switch of wig. And then she offers herself as a kindness. And she knows it's not going to be nearly as meaningful as the wife that he loved because she's met Claire. It was just a kindness to send him away with some warmth and some physical touch. Something to carry with him into prison, which I think was beautiful, and I loved it, and it was really sweet. And so, yes, then he's arrested, and he goes to Ardsmuir, and there you have it, right? And in Claire's world, and Jenny is mad, and the thing she yells at him, she meant wholeheartedly that she would never forgive him and all of the things. As she takes the money, she's just disgusted by what she had to do. So Jamie has ended this 6 years of being in a cave by getting arrested, getting his family the money that's super noble, but he's tired of putting them in harm's way. So he goes to prison. And what's going on in Claire's world in the 20th? Well, you know, the baby's several months old now, apparently, and she's in bed, and it's really hard to tell if she's taking care of herself or she was just having kind of erotic memory dreams of Jamie. I think it started out as dreams. But she's in bed next to Frank, and then in her mind she's like, oh, well, I have a penis right here. Hey, Frank is cute. Like, Tobias is totally my speed. I find him, like, super sexy. Whatever. But Claire's starting to feel these things again, right? After the baby's a few months old. And she has this dream, and she's like, this stuff is reawakening. What do I do with it? But she looks really desolate. Just like Jamie looked desolate. So we're seeing this comparison again. And in the morning, she's reading the paper, and Brianna starts crying after she rolls herself over. It's a cute scene, and the hot water the shower turns off, and Frank comes out wet and in a towel. Looks really nice, by the way. And Claire's like, she's like kind of pulls back from him, but then she's like, because Frank's clearly interested at this point. I mean, the baby's a few months old, right? And she knows that, okay, it's time. It's time. Something's going on here that I have to handle. So the next thing we see from the two of them is that Claire reaches out to Frank, like sexually reaches out to Frank, and she says, I miss my husband. She wasn't telling him she missed him as her husband. She was missing Jamie. And so she could enjoy sex with Frank if she just kept her eyes closed and fantasized about Jamie. But Frank doesn't know this right away, okay? But that we see. that's really sucky. That was really sucky of Claire. I mean, I get it on one hand, but girl, if you can't connect with who you're with, that's not right. Because she was still not connecting to him. It was just sex. So she, in her mind, I'm pretty sure she was thinking, I'll give him what he wants. He's going to get, he's going to get to be with me. And he wants to be with me, but I still get to be with Jamie while performing my wifely duty and getting an orgasm, right? Ugh, that's just not cool. Makes me feel very terrible for Frank. Very, very terrible for Frank. So we're going to see these little snippets of their life. They're not big snippets in this episode. We got to see a lot more background on Jamie and what was going on there. And so but they're having dinner with the neighbors, the really outgoing, extroverted neighbor who helped her with the wood and her husband. And there's innuendos flying, and after they leave and Brianna's in bed. Now, we don't know exactly how much time has passed at this point. And, they have a nightcap and by the fire, and then Claire comes onto him, drops her panties, that kind of thing. And they start getting to it on the floor. And Frank is like, he can see that her eyes are closed and she's not connecting, and he wants her to connect. And he's like, you never used to do that before. Like before she left and went through the stones. She was always very I guess she was with Jamie. In it, man. I can't do those soulful stares. It's hard to do that. And so, but Frank knew that of her, right? And the fact that she refused to open her eyes even when he asked, then he knew for sure. And at first she's like, if you weren't in the mood, and then he totally calls her out, and he nails it. He's like, when I'm with you, but you're with him. And that is just so terrible. So terrible. Oh, looking at, again, that restraint and subtlety that Tobias holds. And you can see it all just brewing at the surface. And he handled it really, beautifully. And he kind of captured that stiff upper lip of the English. But there was so much more there. You could just see it. It was fighting to get out of him, but he held it back. And so from here, Claire kind of just throws herself into all the things, all the years. And then she decides that enough time has passed and she needs purpose. And she enrolls in medical school. Big deal. Big deal. Hardly any women were. And of course, she's treated pretty badly for first course, and that we see. And Joe Abernathy walks in, and he happens to be an African-American. Abernathy, gayless Abernathy. Do you think Joe Abernathy might be a descendant of the West African slaves that came through the Abernathy plantation? Because how do you think they got their last name? Anyway, he's there. They become fast friends, and they're both outcasts, and they're buddies. And at the end of this, man, it is just wrenching. Claire comes in, says goodnight. They're like, good night, good night. They're just kind to each other, and they pan back, and they're in twin beds. And you're just knife to the heart. And you still see Frank looking at her longingly. He still loves her. But he knows that she's not available. That would be a really crappy place to live. Super crappy. So that's really the foundation of episode 2. And when I first watched the Frank and Claire, I really longed to see her do more of her medical work. But seeing the relationship, now watching it again, I see why the writers focused on the relational aspects, because that's such a heavy part of Jamie and Claire, that relationship, that love, that was it. And to actually see them, Frank and Claire together, being a family with Brianna here and there. Super important, because that was the whole purpose of them staying together, was to, quote, be a family and raise Brianna, but they just had very different definitions of it. It's like, making sure someone's on the same page is more than agreeing to a set of rules. You have to know what the rules mean, how it's defined by each party in order to actually agree to it properly. And they didn't. They stopped at the surface and they got themselves into trouble. So in episode 3, all debts paid, and this means like Jamie paid his debt to society for being a Jacobite traitor, right? Frank paid his debt by staying in the marriage until Brianna was 18 years old and raising her with Claire. Claire paid her debt by sticking out too. Like they paid their debt. Lord John paid his debt. All those things, right? So we're in 1956 in Boston when it starts. And Frank, we learn, is dating outside the marriage, and that this is something that they agreed to, that he could have an outside relationship. Well, she could too, but her relationship is her work. That they could have others outside. They would just be discreet about it. So this is where we first learn about the infidelity. Now, Claire, you could argue, has an infidelity of the heart. Like she never fully came back to him. But I always say she was not unfaithful to him in the 18th because she didn't have a choice, number one, and Frank wasn't even alive yet. So she wasn't technically married to him. Some people think I'm an a-hole for that. Whatever. But Frank is actually having a relationship or relationships outside of the marriage. And we're in 1755 Ardsmuir. So Jamie has been there. I don't know where Jerry came from. For 3 years, roughly. And we see a new governor being quickly installed. And the old governor, Harry Corey, cannot get out of Dodge fast enough. And he's given him the basic rundown while he's leaving. He's just walking out. And we learn that Red Jamie is there. He's called McDo. The other Jacobite men look up to him, and he's kind of their leader. And that Harry Corey has been taking dinner with him every week in order to get the demands of the men and see how they can meet them. So weekly they would have dinner and talk and figure out what to do with each other. But because Jamie is so scary, he had him manacled, his hands and feet manacled. And that's for 3 years. He's the only prisoner in Ardsmuir that is manacled. And Ardsmuir is supposed to be in a part of Scotland where it's just moors. There's like no trees. There's no other things. And yeah, there's really, if you escape, where are you going to go? You're going to die of starvation. You're going to die from dehydration. And there's no place you can get to easily. So it's a pretty you don't need to have great security on Ardsmuir. So of course, Lord John recognizes Jamie immediately and is kind of freaking out because he was so ashamed from that incident when he was 16, right? In 1745? So 9 years prior. So he's sitting at about 25 years old-ish. They're timey-wimey with all kinds of things. This is one of them. Age is sometimes fluid. And Jamie, of course, recognizes him but says nothing. Just says nothing. He's like, he's familiar. He's Craigh. How do I know that name? Of course he knows who it is. And he talks to Murtaugh. We see Murtaugh is alive. I don't know how we got to Ardsmuir from Culloden, where everybody else was killed, but he did. Maybe he got so far down the road that they just took him there. We don't know that backstory. So Jamie actually formally meets him, doesn't tell Lord John he knows who he is. And he agreed that he will keep up the weekly dinners. Yada, yada, yada. And we're kind of seeing this little dance between them. During this time, Jamie and Lord John are trying to work with each other. And some man named Duncan Kerr is found on the moor. And he's raving, speaking Gaelic and French. And Jamie knows both of those. So they kind of strike a deal that he will get his manacles off if he tells Lord John exactly what the guy said, because they keep hearing that rumor of Louis's gold. Louis's gold. Louis's gold. Louis had to have sent gold to his cousin. Well, it never reached him, obviously. In order to make a difference for the battle, they lost, and nobody ever found it. So there's this great rumor that it still exists somewhere in this region. and they heard the word gold. And so Jamie listens, but Duncan Kerr didn't have much to say except very personal things to Jamie about the Mackenzies and about a white witch and about those things. So Jamie thinks it's about Claire, and maybe somehow she's back, right? So he tells Lord John that he was just raving and that he was talking about silkies and other things, which he was, and white witches and that sort of thing. But Lord John knows he was keeping something back. So Jamie had asked that the men could trap meat, rabbits and such, right? Put traps out when they were out cutting peat, and that they could actually forage for greens so they don't get scurvy. Of course, Lord John is like, what the hell? Ew, greens, gross, right? So Jamie escapes during one of their times out on the moor. There's a distraction, blah, 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 and then he leaves. And he goes, presumably, to the little island off the coast where young Ian got picked up. Silky's Island. Okay? We're not sure. He comes back after 3 days and grabs Lord John when he's like urinating. That would stink to be like caught peeing off guard like that. And grabs him around the throat and lets him know in no uncertain terms that he knows exactly who he is and where he knew him from and about the debt of honor and all of those things. And then he wants Lord John to kill him because not only did he have a debt of honor, but he also vowed to kill him next time he saw him after that honor was fulfilled. But then Lord John wouldn't do it because he's an unarmed prisoner and he has honor. He truly does have honor. I mean, I love Lord John. And David Barry is just picking up his sensibilities so well. And they have their dinners and they play chess and they talk. And Lord John is always shocked by how cultured Jamie is. We only see a little bit in the show, but he's just, oh, you know what this sauce is? Wow. I couldn't even have picked that out. You're so chic, kind of thing. But as the months go by, Lord John has fallen in love with him, and he makes an overture after Jamie shares about Claire. And Lord John shared about how he lost somebody at Culloden that was very meaningful to him, and he didn't want to live either. It really embarrassed his brother Hal. So this tells me that Hal knows that his brother is gay. Probably the only person that knows, but I suspect that Minnie would know as well, his sister-in-law, because she knows everything and she was a spy and she's amazing. But that Hal just looks the other way. Like, that's how Lord John got to Ardsmuir, is that he had a relationship with somebody that went sideways and it was another man. And in order to keep it from getting investigated further, he just got sent to Ardsmuir instead. Like Harry Quarry screwed up and got sent to Ardsmuir. Lord John screwed up and got sent to Ardsmuir. So that's the kind of background on that. So Lord John, I'm pretty sure knows. I mean, Hal, Lord John's brother, knows about his sexuality. And he intimately reaches out for Jamie's hand in too personal way with sexual connotation. And Jamie's just like, oh. He was very calm, but he had a strong reaction. And things shifted after that. And, and then the prison was getting closed down. Like, they stopped having dinners. The prison gets closed down. Everyone, including Murtaugh, was put on ships and sent to the colonies for 14 years of indenture. And Jamie, because of his status, he couldn't, only the king could pardon him. And the king was like, I don't want to do that. So Lord John, because he respects Jamie and loves him, he found another avenue. And that was to place him on an estate in the north of England called Hellwater. There's something called the Water District. And it's the very northwest of England, not too far from the Scottish borders, actually. So it's not real metropolitan, but it's a wealthy family, huge estate. And these are family friends that Lord John has known since he was a child. So of his family, this goes way back. The problem is their only son, Gordon, was killed at Culloden, and Lady Dunsany, the wife of the estate, doesn't like Jacobites at all. So they try and keep it from her. Of course, the woman of the house knows everything. We come to find out later. But he's going to work as a groom. He's going by the name Mackenzie, Alex Mackenzie, Mac. And he's going to work with horses. So Lord John afforded him the most freedom he could give him, though he was on parole, basically. So he's still in jail, but he gets to work with horses and be outside and to have a modicum of freedom. And the only people that know he's a prisoner are Lord John and Lord Dunsany. For sure, right? So that's what's going on with him. And so they're and Lord John apologizes, and they're reworking toward their relationship. And this was the best he could do for him, because he certainly could not get him a pardon. And Lord John would visit him every quarter to check on him, because he was holding his parole, essentially. So Jamie's going to have a new life. We don't know what happened to the other prisoners, where they went in the colonies. We don't know what happened to Myrta, hide nor hair of anybody, right? But some of the men that we knew, that we'd seen before, were there. So we kind of fast forward through Brianna's birthday party and then Claire's graduation. Now she's graduated from medical school, and all her colleagues are there at the house. And they're it's festive, and Joe's there, and they have dinner reservations, and Frank's girlfriend shows up because he thought her dinner reservations were earlier. Shows up at their house, and Claire answers the door. And so she kind of hushes everybody out. And they go, let's just go to the restaurant. If they can't seat us early, there's 10 people. We'll just go sit in the bar and enjoy ourselves. So she leaves, but Brianna saw this woman, and she's not super small, she would remember. And that night, they have a big blowout. Claire offers him divorce. And, Sandy's not a bubblehead. She's a PhD. Oh, Claire's like, okay, well, I'm a medical doctor. No, she didn't do that at all. But Claire offered him a divorce. She offers him his freedom, and he, is saying that after their neighbors got divorced, that the husband got his freedom, but he lost his children, and he could not have that happen with Brianna. No, I'm just going to stay with it as it is. And he thinks that she hasn't kept her promises because the past didn't get left in the past, and she was still in love with Jamie, right? I don't agree with him. I think she followed the letter of the law, even if not the spirit of the law. And he chose to stay eyes wide open. So I feel bad for Frank being in the situation. I feel bad for Claire too. But they're making it work, even if it's not easy. But they're doing things for the sake of having a family and having Brianna. And interestingly, they're showing Frank as the person in the relationship that's biding his time. What's Claire got to do? I mean, she doesn't plan on going back through the stones. She thinks Jamie's dead. She kept her promise. She didn't look for him. She didn't talk about him. She didn't do any of that. She's just putting her head down and work as her extramarital affair. Work as her second love, right? And so Frank is the one who's biding his time until Brianna's grown or something. Okay. So what do you think about that? Did Claire hold to her promise or not? Then we forward again to Bree's graduation. It's May 1966. And so it's been 20 years since Claire left. Brianna's 18. Great. Awesome. Frank comes home and he goes to Claire and he wants a divorce. He wants to take Brianna to England, and he and Sandy are going to get married. Whoa. Because at first Claire is like, but you got a job offer at Oxford. What about the hospital? What about my career? I can't just leave. And he was like, whoa, lady. I wasn't planning on bringing you. But it's so interesting to me that Claire is perfectly happy keeping up the facade. She's perfectly happy because this is a safe place. Even if they're not harmonious and they're not romantic, it's safe, it's familiar. It makes sense to Claire. And I often see that this is how men are in a relationship. And it's the wife who's like, the youngest is 18. I'm out of here, dude. I have not been happy for years. We've just been calling it in, dialing it in. It's time for me to go have a life and to be loved. But that's exactly what Frank wanted. So it was really interesting that they turned that on its head. But it did seem like even at the end, after they fight, that he gave her one more opportunity. One more. Because if she would have said, I can let go of the past. I can let go of him. Frank would have stayed and tried because he still loved her. So it's a tragedy. It's truly a tragedy. Yes, he went into it eyes wide open and he made a choice to go without so he could be a father. I know many, many people who've done this in their life where they have sacrificed a lot in their personal lives to be the parent they want to be dutiful. And that's valid. And it's very sad and difficult as well. And there's no doubt Jamie will always be between them. And it's not just because Brianna was the reminder every single day. Frank leaves. Claire answers the phone. She's got to go back to the hospital for a surgery. After this surgery, she sees Joe. Frank's been in a car accident and he's dead. And it gets closed out with her looking at his body by herself, and she tells him she did love him and he was her first love. And then she walks through the doors, we think into a new life. She's free. All the debts have been paid by all these people. I think I'll end here because we're already at an hour 13 and I still have things to read. Maybe I'll do a supplemental one this week. I didn't intend it to be this long. Yeah, talking about episode 4 is going to take way longer than 10 minutes. So I want to know what your thoughts are about episode 4, 5, 6, and 7. What your thoughts are as we move into those, because we're just trying to recover them, look at them new, and see where we're heading into this next season. There's a lot that goes on in these next, 10 episodes. So, this is where we're going to stop, and I'm going to go through those other emails very quickly. And I appreciate you listening, and I want your feedback. Contact at adramaofoutlander.com. 719-425-9444 is the voicemail line. Please use it. I want to hear from you. Okay, so Meredith, who's always awesome, she says, I don't like thinking that season 4 will be so compressed, but what if the third episode, The False Bride, refers to Brianna meeting Leary? Ooh. You're so good, Meredith. It's possible, but it seems like it's a little too soon. The False Bride, I found out, is actually a song. It's a Scottish folk song. Look it up. I did put a link on the group because we had a conversation about that. And I'll do my best to remember to put a link into the minimal show notes since I cannot type very well. You can't see what I'm doing, but I'm pointing to my casted right hand. It does come off in a week. So the next podcast I won't be able to type either. I'll have another one up in about 4 or 5 days. And she says that's the only thing she can think of. And then there's a hand fasting that takes place, and that might be blood of my blood. It's tough to know what order they're going to do these things in. And she would like to see scenes with Lord John and Murtaugh. She believes that Jamie would have told Murtaugh about John's interest. Well, I don't know, because he may not have told... I don't think he would have had time on the show version, because they got sent to separate places. So I don't think so. I don't know if that's something he would disclose to Murtaugh. Maybe. And if he did, then, yeah, Murtaugh would be shocked to find out that John is a bestie. And Claire feeling like John is a rival for affection is strange enough, but seeing a rivalry between Murtaugh and Lord John would be really cool. I hadn't even thought about that. Awesome. Okay, so, and I have from Riche. Oh, no, this one's from Kislina. Hello, Kislina. Ulysses and Phaedra, the African slaves in the American colonies. I'll be interested in how the show makers approach the subject. I won't give away spoilers, but they are more than human chattel. Kisses. I agree. I look forward to that too. Mindy Pownell messaged and said, thinking about the titles, Blood of My Blood, it's either meeting Bree or meeting William. The False Bride, ? I don't know what order the titles are, but that's my guess. Thank you. And then Riche says, as an African American, I think showing an honest portrayal of what existed is a good thing. It is important to understand our history, yet not be bound or hindered by it today. We can watch and understand without feelings of anger, resentment, guilt, or shame, regardless of race. So it may be hard to watch. 12 Years a Slave was super hard to watch. But it is necessary to have a real perspective of reality at the point in history. I mean, it led to a war that almost destroyed our nation, so it can't be overlooked. Fortunately, we've been moving forward ever since, creating a nation of hope, dreams, and inspiration. Regarding the Scottish who came to North Carolina, America as indentured servants, etc., it is a fascinating story. Diana G. said on the panel today at New York Comicon she's referring to, that 1 in 3 colonists at one time were Scottish. They loved the North Carolina mountains because it reminded them of home. I'm a North Carolina girl. Understanding this part of history makes it easier to understand how the rumbles of rebellion led to the American Revolution. Many of those men were part of the Culloden Rebellion, and there was no love for the English. They felt freedom and possibility in America that just weren't possible in Scotland and were willing to fight for it. This is one of the reasons I love history. It helps us understand how we got here and why. That's fascinating because many Scots actually fought on the side of the crown during the American Revolution. They had been pretty beat down, but there were a fair amount that were on, the rebellion side too. Thank you for your post. That means a lot to me. Let's see. She's funny. Riche posted more to me when she said the Cherokee still have a strong presence in the North Carolina mountains, so I think having them in the show is a solid, believable change. I'm so ready to see Murtaugh! ! He's truly missed on the show. And she says, wow, I just realized how many comments I make. Ha 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 ha, smiley face. I love your comments, Riche, and I am grateful that you send them in. And then the last one is from Susan Stein. It just occurred to me what false bride might mean. It could be Jocasta's wedding. I'm not going to say who she marries or might marry. She can't think of anything else it might be, but you never know with Outlander. Oh, and she would really like some reading suggestions. So if you have any for her, she's going to have some surgery. I would like her help, and I would like to be able to respond to her. Thank you for all those comments. I really appreciate you guys. I think it's a believable change to be utilizing a tribe that was easy to get historical content on. And so we're going to see the same relationships in essence, but with different names. And that's totally fine with me. And it is believable because their presence is there. And it makes a lot more sense. And so you have to sort of look at the show as having to find the best quality and economy at the same time and how they can make it all happen. These books get bigger for a while. Like I said before, if you were listening to the read-along, that Fiery Cross is going to take us about 43 to 45 weeks to get through. It is immense. And some things I might be able to condense, but there's so much detail. And I know a lot of author friends. I read tons of books, and some people can slam out 600-page book, in a year. And that's not a problem, or a 500-page book. But I think with the amount of research that Diana does and how she allows the characters to talk to her, She has a little bit of a slower process. And I know it's years in between books. But hey, they've lasted 20, what year is it? 2018? 27 years, going in 28 years so far. So the story is not going anywhere. It's probably going to end up being in some of the lists of classics at some point. I don't know how old a book has to be to hit that. That's funny. I have no idea. So I do want to hear from you. I know you guys are rewatching the episodes. What do you hear? What strikes you new? What's fresh? What's like shocking to you? What's interesting? Like, talk to me about it. I really want to know, because I'm surprised, frankly, by my response. And part of the reason, as well as being really busy with the read along, that I didn't go back and try and watch them whenever I had the chance is because parts of season 2 to me were unenjoyable. Like, I didn't like them. And most episodes in season 2 I will not go and rewatch. And I had no idea really, even though I enjoyed last season, I had no idea how rewatchable season 3 is. It's very rewatchable like season 1. So I'm really thankful for that. And I'm glad I was able to kind of make that evolution in my own mind. And I love it. Like, obviously I took really detailed notes again, and no, I didn't go back to my original podcast on it because I wanted it to be coming from where I am right now. And having gone through all of Drums again with you, I wanted to really come with that different vantage point. And it's standing the test for sure. So let me know what you think. Again, it's 719-425-9444. And it's contact@adramofOutlander.com. And hey, go join the group on Facebook under A Dram of Outlander. You have to answer 3 simple questions. It's a private group. We do that so we can have a little bit, it's not crazy in there. It's a really nice place to be. Very little moderation. Occasionally you have to talk to people about selling stuff or whatever, but not often. It's just a really nice place to be. Or go and like the Facebook page, A Dram of Outlander. I know, surprising. The website is adramofoutlander.com. And you can go through and read the old posts. And Jan is writing a bi-weekly post now that has to do with, last one was on forgiveness, and this next one was on revenge. When you can't forgive, when is it reasonable? And that will be up actually next Monday. And you can find all the pictures and all the things that we've done over the years, as well as all the podcasts. So the other place you can find A Dram of Outlander is on Twitter and Instagram under Dram of Outlander. There's no A in the front. And please interact. If you want to talk to me on Twitter, just use the hashtag ADOO. It makes it easier for me to find. And there's so much going on because we're all excited about the show coming back. And I want to hear from you wherever you want to connect. And you can totally help the show by going onto Apple Podcasts through iTunes and putting on a review. Every 5-star review helps people find me. Seriously, it makes a huge difference. Go into Spotify, Google Play Podcasts, go into all those places that you listen and put in reviews for me. And I really appreciate you. The final way that you can support the podcast, besides sharing it, talking to people, and joining the different A Dram of Outlander community spaces, is financially. I know I ask every week. It's the same call to action because that's what I need from you. I need you to interact. I need you to share the show. And I need support. And financial support can be a monthly offering through patreon.com/adramofoutlander, or it can be a one-time offering. And at some point, I'm going to put on a button on the website that somebody can donate if they want to as well and help support. Because I'm a one-woman show. So I appreciate you greatly. And I look forward to hearing from you. And I'm getting very excited for the show, especially after seeing the panels. And looking at the pictures that are out and the clips we've seen. Oh, and the new credit came out. The new credits in music that Bear McCreary put together has definitely a Southern flavor. And you can hear the instruments that are from the area of the colonies. And just the little clips that we get to see in those opening credits are beautiful. So, until next time, Slán je va.